Hi guys, it's Lucy, and today we're going to be doing my March wrap-up. So the month of March has been a month, any other month. School happened, I have yet to fail my classes, so that's good. This past month I read 8 things. 6 of them were actual full-length novels, and 2 of them were graphic novels. The first book that I read this month was The Academy Alignment by David Davis and Andra St. Ivani. I received this book from NetGalley in exchange for an honest review, which is exactly what I did. There is a full-length review on my channel, which I'll link down below and somewhere on the screen. And basically, I like this book pretty well. It is about a boy who is living his life and, blah blah. Then he gets a scholarship to an elite private school, and he gets there and he finds out that the school is not exactly what he thinks and that there's this whole huge mystery that he needs to solve and find out what happened to other people at the school and all this other stuff. And yeah, I gave this book 3.5 stars. And again, if you want to know more of my thoughts, I did a full-length review, link down below. The next couple of books that I read were for Slay That series. I never did a wrap-up for the readathon because I kind of failed. So the first book that I actually read for Slay That series was Messenger by Lois Lowry. This is the third book in the Giver Quartet. Messenger follows a boy named Maddie. That's kind of all you need to know because I don't want to give up any spoilers based on the previous books. What I will say is I thought that the books were not connected at all, but this book really brings them together, and it was actually my favorite of the series. I gave it 4.5 stars, and the other books in the series I gave 4 stars, and I actually did finish the series, but I'll get to that later. And yeah, I really enjoyed it. I really recommend The Giver Quartet. The next book that I have to talk about is a book that I read during Slay That series, but it wasn't for Slay That series because I had started it previously before the readathon had started. But I did finish it during the time of Slay That series, during that 8-day period. So I'm going to include it in this part of my wrap-up. And that book is The Winner's Curse by Marie Rakowski. I buddy read this with Katie from Katie Loves to Read, and I will link her channel down below, and I had a good time. Buddy reading is a good time. This was actually my first buddy read, so yeah, it was a fun time. I enjoyed it. If you want to buddy read with me, let me know. I don't bite, I promise. I gave this book 4 stars. It is set in a fantasy world with no magic. It follows a girl named Kestrel who is the daughter of a high-ranking general. And she is also well respected and everything because she is that person's daughter. So she goes into town one day and then she goes to the slave trade house thing and she ends up buying a slave. And the book just kind of goes off from there, and then a bunch of things happen and there's a bunch of political things that happen. So I enjoyed this book. As I said, I gave it 4 stars. The first half of the book is definitely much slower, which was kind of an issue because it wasn't as gripping to read. But then once the second half came, it became much faster, and the action really started to happen, and it became much more enjoyable. So yeah, overall I did like it. I'm not sure how I feel about the romance aspect involved in this, but I do still plan to read the next book in the series, which is The Winner's Crime, I think. The next book that I read was also part of Slay That series, but I didn't finish it during Slay That series. I finished it after Slay That series was over, and it was Sun by Lois Lowry. This is the 4th and final book in the Giver Quartet, and I actually just finished it very recently. And I enjoyed it too, not as much as the third one. This book was kind of more reminiscent of the first book, and if you've read it, you definitely know what I mean. And I did enjoy the main character, but not as much as I enjoyed the previous main characters. Sometimes their actions didn't really make sense to me, but in the context of the story, I guess they kind of made sense, but I just wasn't really a big fan of it. But I did think that this book was a good conclusion to the series, so I enjoyed it. Overall, I really enjoyed the Giver Quartet, and I'm glad that I was able to finish it. I had a good time during Slay That series. I didn't take part in the readathon as much as I wanted to, not just with reading, but I didn't take part in any reading sprints. I wanted to take part in more reading sprints, and I'm really sad I couldn't get to, but I had a project due that week and things going on, so I just wasn't in the cards for me. I am glad that I got to read as much as I did, and there was one book that I forgot to mention that I started reading during Slay That series, but I will talk about that in my TBR because I'm not done with it, so I'm still going to be reading it going into April, so there's that. And yeah, now that we're done with Slay That series, the next book that I want to talk about is What We See When We Read by Peter Mendelssohn. This book I read for my comics class. I gave this book 3 stars. It is basically kind of what the title says. It's just Peter Mendelssohn's exploration of like how people read and how people imagine characters and settings and things like that in their mind, and like the pictures we form when we're reading in order to connect with people and like see how the characters are. And I enjoyed it. It just went by really slowly for me. It might have just been because it was required reading, but I feel like a book that is half pictures, I feel like it should have gone a lot more quickly than it did for me. And sometimes it was just kind of boring because he kind of repeated a lot of his ideas, I felt like. The next and last full-length novel I have to talk to you guys about is Tragedy Girl by Christine Hurley DeRiso. I received this book on NetGalley in exchange for an honest review. I did not enjoy this book. I gave it 2.5 stars. I will be doing a full-length review on it. That will come out closer to the book's release date because the book is supposed to be published on April 8th, so I will have the review up probably the 7th or the 8th or the 6th, somewhere closer to that date. Yeah, but just for now, know that I wasn't a big fan of it, and it did keep me entertained though, which is, I guess, what a book is supposed to do. But I will have more details in my review, which again will be up closer to the date of publication. Now I have 2 comic books to talk about, or graphic novels to talk about, that I read for my graphic novel comics class, whatever. And the first one that I'm going to talk about is Miss Marvel, Volume 1, No Normal, which is written by G. Willow Wilson and Adrian Alphona. I had to memorize that. I gave this book 4 stars. I had a really good time reading it. I thought it was really funny. Or not really funny, but I thought it was really enjoyable to read. I will definitely keep going. This book, if you haven't already heard of it, I mean, comic books are never really that mainstream, but like, this is definitely most mainstream, especially because it is considered very important because the main character is a Muslim girl, and that hasn't really been seen in the comic universe before. So yeah, it has that added aspect on top of her. And the basic premise of the story is that Kamala Khan, who is the main character, gets powers that turn her into Miss Marvel, and it just kind of follows her from there and her acclimating to her powers. The first volume follows her really her first mission kind of thing. And yeah, it's a really good book to read, especially I think if you're new to comic books. I think it's a good thing to read because it is an origin story. The last thing I'm going to talk to you guys about, and the second comic book I'm going to talk to you guys about, is Bitch Planet Volume 1. Again, I don't have this with me, but it was an experience, if that is to say anything. I gave it 4 stars. I really enjoyed it. It's about this futuristic society where women's rights have basically regressed a lot more, and the whole society is kind of led by the fathers. This is kind of hard to explain, so bear with me. And then women are expected to be obedient, look a certain way, and anyone who doesn't is sent to a correctional facility, which is termed Bitch Planet. That's not the actual name, but a lot of the characters do call it that, but there is a real correctional facility name for it. But it's Bitch Planet. It's for the girls who they think are bitches, basically. And this is a really great feminist read, I think. It is, again, not at all what I expected. Based on the title, I don't know what I was expecting. But I don't know, I thought it was going to be about aliens for some reason, and it's not. So there's that. But even with that, I really enjoyed it, as I keep saying. If any of that interests you, I don't think I explained it really that well, but if my horrible explanation interests you, you can definitely check it out. I definitely do recommend it. It is not for children, though, because there is a lot of nudity. The title is Bitch Planet, so take from that what you will. Those are all the books that I read in the month of March. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, please be sure to give it a thumbs up. If you have any opinions about any of the books that I read over the course of the month, please be sure to let me know in the comments down below. If you like seeing me talk about books, then be sure to subscribe to my channel because I make more videos where I talk about books. Again, thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in my next video. Bye!